Perfect. Looks like it's recording.
Yes, it is.
Everyone's here. All the presenters are here, so I think we can get started. Folks will keep arriving with those nice little chirps. Nonty, are you up for hosting or facilitating a kind of grounding ceremony for us to all enter this space in a mindful way? Does that still feel like something that we're hosting?
Yes. Thank you. Should we start?
Sure. Yes, this would be a great time. Most of the folks that we need are here, and a few will arrive.
Right. Wow. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time and for being co-creators of this powerful, beautiful healing space. I would like us to just ground ourselves and come into the space. If we wish to close our eyes, I have 5 candles in front of me, and 4 of them are representing people from the 4 directions. And the 5th one is inviting Great Spirit and our ancestors to join us in this process. So if we can just take in a deep breath and allow ourselves to come into the space, to bring our high consciousness, to invite the invisible ones in whichever way that is comfortable for us, to invite our ancestors into the space, to create a connection between ourselves, a safe, sacred space of healing, of growing, and of learning from each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I also asked the luscious springtime of Virginia to help us this morning. All of the birds seem to chirp with enthusiasm to help us navigate these conversations of equality and working together. So thank you everyone for coming. Looks like we have wonderful, over 30 of us here to talk, and of course, so much gratitude for everyone showing up voluntarily to share their thoughts and their presence and lend an ear to hear the stories for the very complex topic of how race and privilege and inequality is showing up in our precious eco-village movement, which is sometimes hard to talk about the shadows of something that we all believe so much in, and I know we're all working so hard for. Just a little overview of the flow today is we're going to, oh, by the way, I guess not everyone here knows me because I don't know most of y'all, but I'm Thumbs. I work with NextGEN North America, and I travel between various communities here in North America trying to weave them together. And I am co-hosting today with Priska. Priska, are you up for introducing yourself?
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Priska from Brazil. I work with Casa Jóvenes, the Latin American branch of NextGEN, and Casa Brasil as well, and NextGEN, the Youth Council. And yeah, I'm coordinating the webinar, and I'm really, really, really happy to see you all here. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel so lucky to get to work with Priska on this. It's really been a dream to collaborate with you, so thank you. And so Priska's going to be holding down a lot of the behind the scenes magic over the course of the call. So I'm holding space here as facilitating, just kind of being helping things flow in that way. But if there's other logistical things and questions about how to use Zoom and other aspects that, you can directly message her in the chat. You can choose to just directly message Priska if you would like to ask a question. Cool. So today, the layout, we're going to be here for 2 hours, and we're going to rotate. Each speaker is going to have kind of these 15-minute blocks, and in their 15 minutes, they can share their story and kind of go anywhere they'd like with their time. It's definitely like whatever is feeling called to share, and then within each of those 15 minutes, they finish early, then that leaves space for folks to ask questions right then. And so we can have the speaker will present, and then we'll create a stack for asking questions. And if you want to be next in line for asking a question, you can just into the communal chat. You can do the hand raise, which for some people who are more familiar with Zoom, you can get into the little bits of like, oh, I want to put my hand up. But honestly, in some ways, it's easier for us as far as managing the order of people with questions, is if just into the communal chat, you say to everyone, and you just type capital H, capital H. Okay, so for example, I just did that, me to everyone, and I did capital H, capital H. And that just shows I have a question I'd like to be placed next in the stack. And so we'll just keep track of that. And so once you've typed that, you don't need to worry. We'll just make sure you're the next one addressed. And if there are a bunch of questions and it starts to take over those 15 minutes, just for the sake of everyone having the same amount of time to share, we'll just move those questions back towards the end of the meeting, and we'll continue to ask any questions that you don't get during those 15-minute blocks. We'll ask towards the end of the meeting, and the idea is by the end of the meeting, if folks don't have any more questions for the presenters, then we're going to break out into smaller groups on Zoom, little digital breakout rooms, and that's when you can then have discussions amongst yourself, and then we'll come back to the larger group to share our reflections from our small breakout sessions. Yeah, and the time is not super strict. I know I have a little time after, so if there are burning questions and you want to stay a few minutes after the call, I'm definitely here to see where we can take the energy of this conversation. And so it's not a hard deadline, but are there any questions? This would be a good chance. You can type HH if you have any questions about the schedule and flow of today's meeting. Wonderful. So either no one understands how to use HH or no one has questions. So getting closer. Okay, so I thought I would start with just a little background. And it's kind of funny, like I'm talking to my computer here, and I assume everyone can hear me, so I'm gonna try and find the intimate connection here in the digital interface. But I just wanted to start. Priska's gonna talk about Jen's relationship with this topic of race and privilege and inequality in the eco-villages, but I was the one who proposed this topic, so I just wanted to give a little bit of background as to why this feels so alive for me. And the shortest answer is simply because it's so complicated. Honestly, race and privilege in eco-villages is one of these questions that, unlike solar panels and unlike gray water management and unlike membership protocol, race and privilege in community just seems to be beyond what I can comprehend right now, and I'm wanting to reach out to the wider world and community to try and search for more answers and understanding. And inherently within race and privilege and community, it really can't be solved without community. You know, I can't do this on my own, and none of us can heal the problems of inequality and the disadvantages of various privileges without working together as community. So, and I've noticed here in the North American movement, ecovillages have been pioneers in so many various social and so many problems, and really becoming cutting edge places for healing various sustainability innovations, and new pioneers in sexual identity, and pioneers in cooperative ownership, and pioneers in vegetarian diet, and pioneers in off-the-grid living. But it feels like a time in our movement when it's really time for us to focus more on healing racism and creating more equity across race and class. So right now in North America, I've noticed there's definitely a yearning for the movement to step into addressing these issues with all of the incredible power it has as a collective movement. A little background for me is that I grew up in the Central Valley of California, which was an area with 3/4 Latino, so it's actually a minority white community. And even though it was a beautiful place of cultural mixing, it was, and there was a very proud Mexican culture, it was still the kind of place where you knew that the field workers and the day laborers, which is the lowest income jobs, were probably going to be filled by Latinos, and the large estates and the gated communities were probably going to be filled with white people. And it's such a complicated confluence of class and race, and also just that it wasn't that wealthy of a town at all, that it's too complicated for me growing up to point to there being any one villain of the process, but could always feel that there could be a better way. And so now I've traveled a bit throughout the United States and have noticed that, you know, communities have played really pivotal roles in some civil rights, in the civil rights movement in the States that would have been about like a half century ago, which feels so long, and it's never ends. But in the mid 1900s was definitely a time of really social change. And I recently visited a community in Georgia, which is a place known for many beautiful things, but Georgia also has a vast history of racism. And I was there and I visited a community called Koinonia. And they, since the 1940s, their revolution has been simply to have black and white farmers working side by side, owning the land together, making equal pay, and defending each other from the local murderous racist gangs. And so their act their radical act was to attend church together and to just make the same amount of money. And they did that as a community. And so for me, that was a hint, is like how much of this activism can simply just be actively living together equally and protecting one another. I also wanted to give a shout out to modern folks in North America. Like there's Soulfire Farm is a community that, an eco-village that could definitely is Black led and woman led, and they're doing extraordinary work to reconnect Black folks with their influential role in organic farming and the pre-colonial spiritual traditions that have so much Black culture connected with the land. And they're trying to tell that story as opposed to the bloody slave history that mostly gets told as far as Black folks' connection with the rural landscape. And as an eco-village, they've been able to achieve so much by owning their own land and hosting their own workshops, and that is really stepping into the potential that eco-villages have to be pioneers in activism and racial healing. However, it's still really complicated. You know, I'm currently living at this community in Northern Virginia, and they are an organic farm that's aspiring to become an eco-village. And there are already so many steps ahead of most aspiring ecovillages. You know, they own hundreds of acres of land. It's an organic farm. They've been tending it for decades. They have a wide network of neighbors and customers who eat their food. Many of the members of their community already have years of experience in activism, and they have a rich network of local and urban allies to help them become an eco-village that's focused on activism. So I've really never met a group of white people at this phase more empowered to become a activist-based eco-village. And yet it's still so hard. You know, I watch them trying to figure out things like how to host an educational conference on natural building without all the instructors just being cis white men, and how to have the audience of this natural building convergence not just all be white, and how to support it. How do you support when you have new members coming in who have criminal records, right? And have government fines and have pending court cases. And once you're opening your door to a diversity of members, there's a lot of complicated questions that come up. And most of all, what I feel like is probably also pertinent for a lot of us here that I'd be interested to hear folks share about is how challenging it is when you feel like what you're doing is what the world needs and that not enough people are doing it, and yet not to burn yourself out in trying to do it. Like, a lot of these problems we're facing are so big and so expansive and so complicated. When you feel like you're finally doing the work to solve it, how do you not work yourself so hard and burn yourself out along the way? So I'm hosting or helping facilitate this webinar because I want to kind of look beyond my little United States eco-village bubble and learn about the history and struggles and successes from other parts of the world. And I just feel so lucky to be sharing this webinar with such an extraordinary mix of community builders. And I'm not really hoping that we find any solutions right away, but I hope that if we share our stories, we can find empathy with one another and keep writing this story of how eco-villages can help create the more beautiful world we want to live in. So that's the inspiration for this. I'll pass it on to Priska now to share about Jen's view.
Yeah, well, thank you, Thumbs. Great. So about Jen's view, since we're, working with NextGEN, and this is a Jen's webinar, we have searched for, more of an official statement from Jen on the topics, especially racism and inequality and privilege. And while they do talk about human rights very, very specifically, it's in the, if you go to the website in the vision mission statements, you can see very clearly that Jen really cares about human rights and everything involved with this. But there's nothing really concrete yet. I think Jen is working towards building a more concrete statement or maybe even actions regarding these topics. And I think this is a great opportunity that we're doing this webinar so we can kind of start doing this as a group together and start building and bringing more attention to these topics, because they do exist even in our wonderful world of ecovillages. And so it's really, really cool that we're having this opportunity here to talk about this. And I hope we can, if anyone here is interested, we can talk about this later. We can continue studying these topics and maybe do study groups or maybe create a Facebook group or whatever group. I don't know any, in other social medias, but, continue with this, continue this journey, do maybe more workshops and things like that. So yeah, I'm really, really, really happy to be here, as I said, and I'm happy we're talking about this very important question and issue. Yeah. Thank you. Thumbs?
Yeah. So now on to the speakers for today. Our first is Nonty, who is one who shared with us that grounding ceremony to open it up. Nonty is and I'd love, Nonty, for you to expand your introduction, but the little slice I have of the amazing person that you are is that you're an advocate for Ubuntu, Indigenous, which is an Indigenous wisdom and sustainable living as the importance of community building and eco-villages in modern society. You are a social justice and diversity activist, a facilitator and sacred space holder, as we've already experienced, and has been involved in various organizations, including GEN, and is one of the co-founders of Rise Ubuntu Network. And I will put the link for that network into the chat and pass on the mic. It's all yours, Nonty.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. So my name is Dogozo, and it's very interesting. Just a few days ago, I was in Germany, and when they asked me, what does Nonty mean? And I realized that for the first time, I had to explain that actually Nonty means nothing. When we get named in Africa, mostly our names mean something. But because when I grew up going into, you'll say, white schools, and the teachers didn't make an effort to learn to pronounce my name, and I was too young to understand what that meant and what was going on, and I allowed them to give me the name Nonty. So this is just also one of the things that very interesting, that it has to show for my journey that it's always a process of healing, and things that I myself weren't even aware that they were racist or prejudiced. So there's still a lot of learning and still a lot of growing and healing to do. I am originally from South Africa. I was born during apartheid, and I grew up in apartheid, and I saw apartheid fall. And so for me, colonial trauma is in me. Racism, the story of racism is in me. I embody it and I carry it with me. So I don't see any faces right now, so I'm worried.
Oh, we can hear you. It's coming across loud and clear, and we can see
Okay.
your face and your smile.
Fantastic, fantastic. So just coming to this webinar, also as Tams has already said, it's almost like a very huge topic. It's a huge topic, and it's almost like taboo in our movement. When I came to Europe, I wanted to live in community because I'm from South Africa, and in Africa we still hold community. I grew up in community, even though it was not more of saying we live in community, but we still live, we still have this connection in the cultural and the social side. It's still very strong. We are members of the community. And I wanted that when I came to Europe. I wanted to live in community, and I wanted my son to live in community. And I was really happy to be part of GEN and to meet GEN and the Ecovillages movement, and completely inspired and by the network, and I am still inspired by the network. And I'm also involved in other different social networks in Europe that are doing and fighting for change. So I'm written some things down because I'm actually working on a project on this subject of privilege and racism, and telling my own journey and my own story. So I felt like I usually speak, but it just felt very strong that I will have to read something for this webinar. This is a tough topic. It's a tough topic that my first experience of being able to openly speak about this was in Findhorn through Jill and process work. And for the first time, I was able to experience how deep and how deep is the wound, and how much healing that needs to be done within our network when it comes to this topic. And I've found that it's a really difficult topic. I have been involved in our network within the functional structure itself, and also as a member living in a community. And I have to say that my experience has been really difficult as the only I will say a Black woman in a circle of middle class. I found that middle class white So first, I would like to be excused if I use inappropriate, maybe uncomfortable. It's still a learning process for me. If I use we and people feel like I shouldn't be speaking for them, I would like to apologize in advance for that as well. It's still a learning process. It's a 6 years deep learning process. And so from my experiences, which were very rough and tough, and I need to also say that they are not only my experiences, because I've spoken to other members of our networks who are African or who are also from the East, who have experienced similar things. So I'm just going to follow what I've written down so that I don't feel like I missed something maybe later. So as Thams has already said, with all this, there's almost a sense like in our movement that we doing this good work, right? We are so involved in creating this new story, you know, this really wanting to create this new world. And it's almost as I have been in situations where I had to call out to my colleagues or people in our network and say, you are racist. And feeling that I can actually say this because I felt like it's a safe space. We do all this inner work. We have forums. We have all these things. But I quickly realized that this topic is not something that white people are ready to hear. White people are not ready to hear that they are racist. They are very fragile about this. So then what comes after that, it's either anger, a reaction, or crying, or a sense of you don't know what you're talking about. And I realized this comes from this idea of we are good people. How can you say we're racist? We've been living in eco-villages, trying to create a new world. So it's almost like this illusion of we've been doing these great things, of which it's true. We've been, living sustainably, fighting for climate crisis. So when this issue comes up, it's as if it doesn't have a place. It's as if we are above that. I'm a vegan. How can I be racist? You know? So you must be having issues. You must be having anger issues. And yes, I am having anger issues. I bring 400 years of colonial story with me. This is what I carry with my ancestors. And as a healer, this is what calls me to what? We need to heal this as well. We cannot just sit in the circle in ceremony. We need to go beyond ceremony. And through my experiences of being profiled within our network, I mean, examples of being told before, there was a time when I was doing a conference, I was being told before I was doing the conference that you are not capable of doing this, you will not be able to do this. Being in situations where if I show my anger or if I show my disagreement or if I challenge the leadership and I don't agree with everything, it's seen as I'm this angry Black woman from Africa. So it's a sense of we are not allowed to express ourselves as, I'll say African people now, I don't want to speak from other races. It's a sense of feeling that when you show your emotions or your aggression, or when you are not in agreement with what leadership is saying, it's almost as if it's a shock. It's almost as if it's a shock to the white leadership. It's a sense of not being used to people of color, not being in agreement. And this has made me realize as a person of color that we are actually in this subject simply repeating the same of what is happening institutionally outside. This has made me realize that the most difficult thing, especially people in this social movement, is to understand privilege, the privilege that they have. And it's almost like privilege is invisible to those who have it. It's almost like if you call it out, you are accusing people and you are making them uncomfortable. So for me, what I have understood that even when institutional leadership does not intend or overly plan to make distinctions based on race, ethnicity, or color, racism can still occur. without awareness, and there's a lot of ignorance on this subject. There's a lot of thoughtlessness, and there's a lot of prejudice as well. Yeah. So I need a moment. So as I've already said, these experiences are not just my experiences, but I don't want to speak for other people who are not here. So I'm bringing my own personal experiences and from the people of color who I have interviewed. So what has happened is from my trauma, and when I say I experienced two traumas of living in Europe as a Black woman from Africa holding an African passport, who is constantly abused in the borders. And I travel a lot within the eco-villages. So when I arrive in the eco-villages and they say, oh, you don't look so good. I said, yes, I just had a rough moment with the police in the borders, realizing that they don't understand what I'm talking about because they don't experience borders. Europe has no borders. But for me, as an African person who lives in Europe, Europe has borders. Therefore, realizing that I needed to educate my community of why sometimes I have to be away for such a long time because I don't get a visa between Croatia and Europe. I don't get a visa immediately. And I realized even though I explain these things, there's still no understanding because this is something they don't know and they don't go through it themselves. And also I realized also that there's a lot of trauma, I would say, a lot of trauma behind this. Also, white feminism as well. White feminism, which has no understanding or no clue about the issue of an African Black woman or people of color in general, what issues we go through, and not knowing how to bring this topic also within our movement. So I went through these traumas and I realized that I needed help with my own issues, with my own understanding of what was going on. And I had to go outside our community or our network, and I went into a group called Sustaining Our Life, which I met during the COP in Bonn, Germany. And Sustaining Our Life invited me to a workshop that they were doing on this topic on racism. Sustaining Our Life is an international organization that has been around for many years, and they've been doing a lot of work. And they have come to a point of doing work on racism itself within their organization and outside. And it so happened that it was in Netherlands. And I went there, and 80% of the people who were there were white people, which was shocking for me. And 20% of the people who were there were people of color. Then I realized that this work, it's possible that it can be done. There are white people who are actually willing to talk about this. There are white people who are actually not just writing it on paper as their vision and mission, who are actually doing the work. White people who've been doing this work for years and who still feel and has the courage to enter in a room and say, I know that I'm white and I'm privileged, and can name small few things that they did within these 2 days to actually show and act out their white privilege. There are things that they still need to work on, things that I myself as an African person were not even aware of, that these things acts of showing privilege and racism. So I learned a lot from this and I felt empowered, and I thought I can bring this to the GEN movement. And I started actually in the GEN Europe conferences. I hold spaces for North-South healing and reconciliation, where we can gather together in a safe space and actually work on our racism, work on our internalized racism, work on this issue of how can we live together and how can we heal our prejudice. And it seemed like a few people were really open to it. And this is something that I do now continuously during the conferences. And we had one also last year in Estonia. And we had a few young people who came from Korea as well, that we were able to hold space just for the people of color to work on our own internalized racism and how we feel about ourselves towards white people and how we deal with our anger and how we deal with our pain. And there was actually a small incident that happened between one of the young people from Korea and young people from NextGEN, and which felt like it needed space for grieving from the side of the young people from Korea. So I just want to also emphasize that I want to say this openly, that when you talk about racism, the also a reaction from white people is usually, no, I am not racist. And I just want to say, yes, we are. Racism is there and it's part of us, and we need to talk about it and we need to say it. How it shows up in the BIPOC, if I have to say, Black people, indigenous people of color, it shows up as internalized racism. And internalization means that we don't vocalize and we don't speak our experiences because of fear. We fear upsetting the system. We fear upsetting leadership. We don't realize that this fear of silence is actually helping to support or to continue this system, this institutionalized racism. And this also fear of not wanting to upset a person or people you love, because these are people that we all live together, we are working together towards this new story. So you don't want to feel like you're upsetting them, because you feel like their heart is in a good place, their intentions are in a good place, they're wanting to make this world a better place. So therefore, we go into silence and we don't realize that this is actually internalized racism. So what happens is that usually then when it seems like you are very opinionated and you are a very strong individual, and it happens that you are not in agreement and you are a person of color, it always comes across as if you are ungrateful. You are ungrateful for the charity that has been given to Africa, if I have to use that as an example. And this then brings me to the point of language, the language that people in the social networks use when they're referring to the people of the South, or the work they do with the people of the South, or the projects they have with the people of the South. These also needs to change. There's a lot of work that needs to be done when we use words like, we are going to Africa to help African people. Africa doesn't need your help. You need to understand that you're not going to Africa to help African people. We're going there to exchange. One, you get nourished when you go to Africa. Two, we already have community. We are very strong in that. We are strong in culture. We have something to give. Three is that you have the privilege of the economy, and you need to understand how did you get to be in the position of having the privilege of the community is because of the resources that are keep being stolen from the global South that come to Europe, that puts you in a position to be able to say, so therefore you are not giving charity. So we need to change the way we speak and the way we see each other, because this is not empowering for the white person who says, I'm going to help. This is also not empowering for the African person who allows the continuity of that language. So we need to be helping each other. We need to be seeing each other as equals, because we are equally intelligent, we are equally capable. Only the system that separates us and that wants to keeps us separated is the one that keeps telling us the lies of we are not the same and we are not equal. So so just give me a moment. So as people of color, or as African people, when we don't speak out our truth, and because we fear of losing these funds, or we fear of losing our friends, I spend 90% of my time with white people. So I say my people because I live with them, so they are racist. It's different levels of racism, but it's racism. It's embedded. It's embedded in the people I love, the people I eat with, the people who are my lovers, the people. It's there. It's racism, and it shows up. And it's tiring for me as a person of color to constantly calling it out. It's tiring and it's draining. It is not our job as the people of color to teach you white people about white privilege. It is not our job at all. So racism deserves the same attention as all the world's problems. It's been part of us and the planet for 400 years. We cannot hide it away. It's part of the work that needs to be done to create a new story. It is very strong mechanism of the very capital and consumerism we are fighting against. It plays into our emotions consciously and unconsciously. It keeps us separated. Yes, we are a human race. Our diversity is our uniqueness and strength, but there's a lot of work to do in order for us to fully get into embodying that truth. It cannot miraculously happen. If we really believe and want to create a new story, we need to start somewhere. And we need to start and realize it's a process. We need to start with a yes, I am a racist, and I understand what that means. We need to create allies. We need to create safe spaces where we can be vulnerable, when we can tell our truth. And we need to go beyond ceremony, because I find that within the GEN network, yes, we have entered into ceremony of healing and reconciliation. But then my question is that when the ceremony is over, then what do you do? So for me, it's the same energy and the you put into the transformational work and the spirituality and the self-growth, the eco-lifestyle, white feminism, permaculture. All this energy also needs to be put into racism. So when you sit in your meditation and you're looking into your ancestors' constellation and you're saying you're working on yourself and you're doing inner growth, can you also look at the racism that comes with that constellation and how you are projecting it and how you are living it in your everyday life? So lots of questions also arise a lot on how do we get people of color to our conferences, for example, Gen Europe conference. And for me, it's what do you want to do with them? You know, after taking pictures and writing the statistics that you had 20 people from Africa from there, what's the next step? What exactly do you want to do with the people of color in the conferences? So I think this is not the question we should be asking. The question should be that we should be asking is why there are no people of color in our networks, especially within right now the European concept. So if we sit with the why, then we are able to really work on the healing of understanding that the why comes with an answer of most of the social, not just GEN, but most of the social networks that I'm involved in are white, middle class, founded, and white middle class people are there. And this shows it's one of the symptoms of white privilege, because it also has to do with class. If the vision is to create a new story, to create Ubuntu, which is indigenous, we need to wake up to the fact that classism and racism seeks attention, and it starts internally. There cannot be a new world that continues to exclude others, that is filled with fear, or a new world that seeks to bring people of color for purposes of window dressing. Having the right intention is no longer enough. Saying you are doing charity in Africa or anywhere in the South or East is not empowering, not for the giver and not for the receiver. It's simply repeating patterns. We need to be at the point of seeing and valuing each other as equals, because we are. So it's 2 points that I want to emphasize. It's the internalized racism that we as people of color, we need to heal and create spaces where we heal and look at that. Because if we don't heal, if we don't support each other, if we don't speak our truth, we are not helping the growing and creating this new story. And the other racism is the different kind of racism that you get from the middle class white people who are in the social network. So this is something that we really truly need to look at. So I am in that position and I have experienced it, and I'm saying this without any, I'm feeling vulnerable. I feel very vulnerable, but I have experienced racism from the people that I live with very strongly. I have been told many times, why don't you leave GEN? Enough times, why don't you leave GEN? Because you are not wanted in GEN. You are too vocal, you have too much to say. And I'm still here because I really believe. And I'm also being told from also the side of the POC is, why are you busy teaching white people about racism? You know, you should be focusing on Pan-Africanism and focusing on empowering your people. And for me, I feel my calling is to do that, is to build bridges and create allies between the two, the North and the South, because this new story includes all of us. It's not just only about Pan-Africanism. It's not just only about middle-class white people. It's about us coming together and doing this together. And yeah, I think I'm just going to stop there for now. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm sure I repeated some things, but
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's just a stop for now because there's definitely so much more to share, and I just want to say, as a member of Gen, that I deeply appreciate your vocalism and deeply appreciate you sharing so vulnerably the pain, because it helps me along my path definitely to feel and not just read the words, but to feel what you're going through, what we're all going through. I'm so grateful to Beatriz for putting in line for to ask the next question. However, because of time and wanting to be mindful of all the speakers getting their chunk, I'm going to have to bump that question towards the to the end. I think we'll still have time for it. And for now, I will pass the mic on. Thank you so much again, Nonty. And I want to pass the mic on now to Nora. Nora is a MA student on sustainable urban planning in Germany. They have a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Management, and that they want to contribute towards the development of sustainable mainstream. And after completing high school, she started researching sustainable communities and to research the interconnections between the various dimensions of sustainability. She's taking part right now in the ASA Glenn Multipliers training cycle. She came across the interlinkages with global power structures, post-colonialism, and the possible current state of the planet and society. So I'm so grateful to have Nora here with us, and the mic is now yours. Please go ahead and share. You have till at least the next, I was about to say 10:05, but we're all in different time zones, so never mind. I'll just let you know when we'll move on to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you for the introduction and for the invitation. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, yes.
Yeah, great. Cool. Yeah, so I want to speak more about the theoretical wide backgrounds on structural racism from my perspective, as we talked about it during around 15 days and very deep processes in this ASA multipliers training cycle I completed 1 or 2 years ago. And it was after that I met Nonty in the last European conference of the Global Ecovillage Network. And yeah, we talked about the topic and about the topics she just named. Yeah, so currently I'm not living in an eco-village, but I'm living, I'd say, in a kind of community. It's an international intercultural student dormitory, and I'd say in my flat there's 4 different nationalities coming together. It is sometimes challenging because I'm very aware of my privileges, of those categories you also have and maybe don't. So I'm white, that's a global privilege. I'm female, which is not, right, well, it's the only privilege I don't have. So being a man in this world is the higher end of the power structure. I do follow a study course. I do have access to electricity, drinking water, internet. I am able-bodied, so I don't have any disabilities. I have parents who had access to work and college education too. Middle class, German middle class, as Nonty said. Which have I forgotten? Yeah, I'm also heterosexual, which is also a power structure. I'm white. Yeah, also belonging to the higher end of the power structure. And in the context of the student dormitory, in the context of my international study courses taking place in Germany, but in English language, I do still have the privilege of living in my own country. So applying for jobs, I first know how to write the application in my mother tongue, how the style of application is. And it's probable that people want to work with people who speak German. So this may not be a problem in some communities, but still it may be, referring to it that people feel comfortable speaking in their native language. Yeah, I've experienced power structures at work every day. I'm still experiencing them every day from my perspective, being the perspective of the privilege, and the perspective of the ally. So I try to see the structure, and I try to see who's present in which contexts, and yeah, try to then understand why. And for example, at the Ecovillage conference last year in Estonia, as Nonty said, there were many white people, and in the context of sustainability in Germany and maybe even Europe, I support Nonty's thesis that it's mostly middle class, sometimes upper class, well-educated people, some even refusing to go to university because of several reasons, but mostly from like the background. And yeah, what moves me about this is that, yeah, I also hear the charitative aspect of these white people doing great jobs, but still referring to the Global South as a place where they do charitative work, where they help and support. So you see this imbalance from the top, where there is someone to be helped and to be supported. So this is about black and white. This is also about Germany, North America, and the rest of the world. And this is also about yeah, like the different ranges of white, colored, and black people and backgrounds. So if I look at you, you come from all over the world, which is very interesting for me. And I wonder, like, maybe you could raise the hands. I've chosen this group view. Maybe you can raise the hands if you have experienced some kind of structural discrimination yourselves already. Okay, thanks. That's quite some. So when I raise my hands, it's only for me being a woman where I experienced racism. Not racism, discrimination. But for some people, these these aspects just sum up. And why is that the case? So what we learned in the multi-place training cycle is that there's something like post-colonialism, and that there's something like structural racism and yeah, heritage taken from it. And this maybe you can also raise the hands, those of you who have learned in history that Colombo discovered the Americas. So I learned that in class. Yeah, well, some of you laugh. He was firstly not the first one to arrive at the Americas, and secondly, he was only the only dumbass who thought he was more better than the others, and now that he needed to change the others actually. yeah, this also has some background, I'd say. Maybe this is not the most scientific quotations I make now, but still, in Europe we have the Christian religion. We have power structures which have always been like this: someone at the top and someone at the bottom. We have, in the time of colonialism, had philosophers claiming that everyone is equal, but with everyone mostly and not referring to everyone, but rather to the male and blah 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 privileged people. So able-bodied, healthy, white, native, and not referring to others. We have the knowledge-based society starting there, with the universities and science being yeah, what people think is right. So whom do people believe, rather the professor than someone who comes from the practice? It's actually a bit stupid, but it's also part of this power structure we started in colonial times and before and after, I'd say, roughly. And yeah, well, we have that. Nonty emphasized that we all, yeah, have roots in where our families come from, where ancestors come from, and the society and societal context and beliefs we come from. So of course, this mindset has somewhat translated even to people today. So there is still the belief that it's good to have power over, for example, power over nature, that we are at the capitalism, which is destroying the planet. And yeah, there we are also at the socialization aspect of, yeah, environmental destruction and of imbalances in the world, because we do have this thinking of power over, and that it's good to have it, that it's good to be in control of things, to know things, and to make a plan and be structured, and all these aspects which go with it. That it's okay to tell people what is right and what is wrong, instead of strengthening their instincts maybe, or their intuition, which is a part of reconnecting. We need to heal, and we need to heal the planet and our own wounds and the collective traumata which exists. So I'm German. Yes, my grandfathers have been involved in the wars. Yeah, and German society has a lot of traumata concerning war, and I do have some too. And many Germans have refugee background, so having had to flee at some point from Eastern German parts to the other German parts, like before Germany was split into two halves, even way before that. So now there are many refugees coming to Germany. Many people are maybe not aware of it, but I think that this collective trauma is part of why this is a difficult situation for many German people. Maybe you can imagine that. Even though they're not aware, and even if it has happened generations ago. Yeah. Let me check a moment. Yeah, something I wanted to say to the resources I downloaded, not downloaded, uploaded in the group chat. So there are many things which were shown to us in this multipliers training cycle. For example, the video of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie about the danger of a single story. I recommend highly to everyone to watch it, and also for those of you who still believe that they're not inherently racist, as Nonty already said, we are all and it's difficult to realize, but we are. There's first the doll experiment, where kids in different countries, so in this video it's Italy, have been asked to say which is it, the white doll or the black doll, which is given certain attributes like good or bad, nice or not nice, beautiful or not beautiful, to mirror that this is inherent in kids all over the world. So apparently it must be a part of us as adults too. And on the other hand, I uploaded the I Can Fix Racism, or what is it called, guide, which will also be found on the drive soon, for everyone to check what, like, at what state they are, and to see what they could do in their role of privilege or not privilege, to go about and to support the process, being either allies or speaking up, which is a very hard job. And Nonty, thank you very much from all my heart for the hardships you're going through with this. And it is present in community processes, and it is a topic which people do often not know about, but there do exist people who have experience and education with guiding such processes. And the recommendation we got in the end of those 15 days was for all the white people to actually go to anti-racism training, for example, as offered by Phoenix. I don't know where in the world it's also offered and by which organizations. And for all the people of color to go to empowerment workshops, to start dealing and start to be able to speak up, actually. And well, it is shocking, as Nonty said. White people tend to be shocked. So if someone speaks up as a person of color in your community and says something about their experience, listen. That's also one step of the I Can Fix Racism guide. Just listen. Just try to deal with it in white spaces. Try to maybe deal with it with a person who knows about those things, but don't confront the Black people or people of color with your with your anger about someone telling you that you're racist. Well, we are. That's it. And even though we try to do our best, we're not. And this this phenomenon of us trying to do the best and then still be called racist is called white tears. Yeah, just to let you know. Maybe you'll encounter the white tears at some point. I'm very curious to hear all the other voices, and want to thank you for listening. I know that my perspective is probably very limited also, and yet I hope that I can contribute something to your processes of communities wherever you are. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Nora. That was wonderful. Yeah, and your experience is exactly as big as everyone else's experience, and is so valuable. So thank you for sharing that. And so many great links too. Yeah, literally looking forward to continuing the conversation after. So we are so lucky now to also have Crystal Bird Farmer joining us from the wee early morning hours on the Pacific West Coast of North America. And Crystal, her technical bio is as an engineer turned into an educator from North Carolina. She became the organizer for Charlotte's co-housing in 2016 and has been involved in co-housing and intentional communities movement ever since. She is passionate about encouraging people to change their perspectives on diversity, relationships, and the world. She owns Big Sister Team Building and teaches at Gastonia Freedom School and is a member of Jenna Alliance. I also want to invite Crystal here with so much gratitude, as I consider her one of my very patient mentors in this process, and has been so wonderful in the Mid-Atlantic white intentional communities movement, showing up in spaces as often one of the few people of color and consistently just helping, holding point, and being so patient with us, good intention but confused white folk, to walk down this path. And I know that's not easy. So thank you so much, Crystal, for showing up. And you have the next 15 minutes to share whatever you feel called. So.
Okay, hello everyone. Like some said, I live in the US. I grew up in a predominantly lower class Black community in the South. So I grew up in North Carolina, and you know, the people that I grew up around were mostly Black people. So I found the communities movement through co-housing, which is big here in the US. And when I started working with co-housing people, I realized that there were a lot of people who grew up in majority white neighborhoods, and they don't really realize that there's a whole nother experience of living in America. So there's a lot of friction that comes when you have experience as a Black person and you're coming up against other people who have no idea about that experience. And then, like Nonty was saying, people who question that experience or don't believe you when you have that experience. So that can be frustrating for people of color, but it's also a good time to try and educate people. So that's what I've been doing the past couple of years in the communities movement. And now working with the GEN Alliance, the North America branch of GEN. So I'd like to break it up a little bit, and just if people want to go ahead and ask questions, I can answer questions, because I think Nonty and Nora both had a lot of good words to say about racism, both from the minority side as being a part of a marginalized population, both being women, and from a place of privilege. So what we understand now is that people who are a certain social class, people who are identified as white, and people who are male have a lot of privilege, and they may not notice it, because it's privilege isn't that life is easy. Privilege is that some things are not hard. So in the US, when it comes to renting a house or buying a house, moving into a new neighborhood, people with privilege find that very easy to do. There are people who are Black or lower class, lower income, they find that hard to do. In the US, we have mass incarceration, so there are a lot of people who have been in prison or served prison terms, and those people find it very hard to find housing, to find jobs, and that's another form of privilege. If you've never been in jail, never been arrested, it's easy for you to find a job and find a house. If you have been in jail, there's a lot of discrimination that you experience. And I say that because a lot of people in the Black community end up going to jail because of racism. So there's a statistic that 1 in 3 Black men in their lifetime will be incarcerated. And that statistic for white men in the US is 1 in 5, not 1 in 5, 1 in 10. So 1 in 3 compared to 1 in 10, that means there are people in my family who have been in jail and been in prison. And I know that their lives are a lot harder as far as getting a job, keeping a job, and finding housing. Their lives are a lot harder than my friends who are white who have never been in jail. Yeah, so I would say that one thing that I find in the communities movement is a lot of resistance to learning about white privilege, because I think most people who are attracted to the communities movement feel like they're already good people, they are very environmentally focused, they care about marginalized communities, they want to help. They want to create a better world. And so the question often is, well, I'm doing all of this. Why aren't there more diverse people who are joining us? And it's pretty complicated, but some of the reasons in the US that more diverse people don't join is that even when you have a movement of people who are very progressive, environmentally friendly, they still have some racism. They still have privilege that they're unaware of and that they act out on. So there's one thing called microaggressions, which is when somebody with privilege or part of an oppressor class does something or says something that is not seen as overt racism, it's more covert racism. So one thing that I get as a Black person with natural hair, people say, "Can I touch your hair?" or "Oh, your hair is so beautiful." And that's a microaggression. That means that they are pointing out something that's different about me. And to them, they might just be saying it as a compliment, but for me, it's another reminder that I'm an other. I'm somebody who is not normal in their experience. And so there are a lot of people of color who live with these microaggressions daily. And when it comes to where you live, you know, where you sleep, where your family is, there comes a point when you just want to be away from all of that. You want to be in a place where you're comfortable. And so if I am living in an eco-village or in a community that's majority white, I may never get to that place of comfort. So that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of people of color in intentional communities, is because they may be concerned that they're going to be treated as different, as other. And that's what I've heard from people in the US. Another reason is because of income and access. So in the US, you know, it's a huge country. A lot of the co-housing developments are in cities or they're in rural areas that have a lot of people with high income. So co-housing relies on mortgages, it relies on people buying their home. So you have to have a lot of money to be able to buy your home or build your home. And in the US, the income disparity between Black and white is about 10 times different. So Black people don't have a lot of wealth due to housing segregation, which is due to racism in how the federal government gave land to different people and the way they structured mortgages. So instead of saying, well, anybody who has the money can buy a house, what happened at the federal and state and local levels is that white families that had money could buy a house, and the Black families that had money and wanted to buy a house could only, you know, buy in this small area of a town or a city. And then sometime up until the 60s, they couldn't even get a federally guaranteed mortgage. So they were not able to have the same mortgage protection that white families had. So that means that a lot of Black families were renting houses. They were living with family. They were living in these parts of town that were not as nice as white families had. And so over time, you have a lot of white families develop this wealth. They have their houses, they have a place where they can live, but Black families don't have the same resources. They don't have the same income or ability to get that income. And so that's one of the reasons why intentional communities in the US are so segregated. There's a lot of white families, there are a lot of white people who are able to generate money and to buy land and to settle somewhere, but that opportunity isn't the same for Black families. So those are two of the big reasons why the communities movement in general is kind of more of a white movement than a movement of people of color, because you know, when I think of GEN, I think of the whole world, and there are definitely more brown people in the world than there are white people. But when I interact with the movement, I see a lot more white people. And that, you know, that's not to say that there aren't a lot of brown people who are doing really good work. It's just saying that there are people with privilege who have been able to do that work a lot easier than the brown people. And the way to fix that is for people with privilege to identify that and work through it, to have conversations with other people with privilege and understand where they can be more open, more welcoming. And again, it's not a question of, oh, I like people of color, I want them to be there. We know that that's true. What we want you to know is that there are ways that you interact, or that your assumptions, your bias, the ways that you think about the world that may be alienating to people of color. So there are things that you do unconsciously that cause tension or cause conflict with people of color. And so that's the work that a lot of good allies have done. Nora had some great links. I think others will put some links in there for people to work through that. And that's not necessarily work that a person of color has to tell you how to do or teach you about. It's something that there are a lot of good resources already out there for doing that. I think that's all really I wanted to say. I think Nora and Nonty had a lot of good points already. So if there are any questions for me, I can answer those.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I haven't seen anyone put their hand up in the stack. I definitely have, you know, extensive questions for you. I'm so grateful for everything you've shared, and want to let everyone know in the original invite, and we'll throw it in the notes again. But in the invite, Crystal, that we posted a link to a communities magazine there, and Crystal has a wonderful article in that magazine that has taught me so much about how communities are putting up barriers to inclusion without even seeing them as barriers. So definitely recommend checking that out, because there's a lot of blindness that is important for us to start seeing. So
I'll post the link here so everyone can go and check it out, and it will be also in the meeting minutes.
Great. Links, links, links. Hope everyone has some free time for links. For now, so we have about 40 minutes left. So we're pretty close to schedule. So I really appreciate everyone sharing so much passion and still fitting it within these kind of arbitrary boundaries. I'd like to pass the mic now to Thyago. I've been practicing pronouncing your name. I hope I got it. Thyago, who is... Yeah, okay, great, first time. Is from Salvador and lives and works in an intentional community in the metropolitan area of Salvador called Terra Mirim.
Yes.
And has started as a spiritual community, but soon developed into a socio-political one, defending the Atlantic Forest territory in which they are located. Thyago is the current superintendent of Terra Mirim, and they studied intentional relations at Rio de Janeiro, focusing on South-South relations. So thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks everyone. First, I'd like to apologize that I cannot have my camera on because we have a very unstable internet connection here. So I tried with the video on and it just didn't work. So I'm gonna stick with the audio for today. So yeah, as Sam said, I live in a community in the third biggest city in Brazil, which is Salvador, which is also I see outside of Africa, and so that's already a very the inequalities and privileges are very evident in our daily life. This community started around 27 years ago. And as said on the resume, we started as a spiritual community focused on shamanism, on a spirituality more connected to the earth and nature. But since we are on the periphery of Salvador, we are also in a very black area. Actually, no, I'd say black resistance area, because in Brazil we have this type of community. It's also a community which are called quilombos, which are the places where the slave black people would run away to. And I'm sorry if I use any words wrong. I'm not very clear on how to use all the correct words in English, but they would run away and make their resistance community. So this place where we are located now, we have 4 of them around us, and we have been working with them for, I think, some 15 years now. And that happened, that transition happened because even though most of the people coming here at first were white people, middle-class white people that were coming here in search of this spiritual freedom and this new connection to nature and themselves. But it was soon evident that we could not just ignore the place where we were located. Like, it was not an accident that we are here, you know? So how can we make ourselves useful to this place? And for the last 20 years, we had an ecological school. We also did some projects with political instruction so that people could access their rights. And yeah, it's an ongoing work. Right now, I came back to live in the community, even though I was in Rio for some 6 years where I'm at Prisca. Now I'm back and working here, and it's been one of my goals to bring this discussion into the community. Sometimes it's kind of hard to have this discussion with the elders of the community, especially because it's female oriented and not oriented, but created by females, by women, sorry. And so sometimes when we have this intersection of privileges, it's hard to talk about, like, yeah, we could be doing more like in racial relations. And then we're like, yeah, but we already been through so much just being women, just trying this new spirituality. So one of the bridges that I've been trying to build here is this one where we can talk about all these different types of privileges and how one of them do not deny the other. So how do I talk to I don't know, to straight women, white straight women? How do I tell them, okay, it's great that you're going through all that. I don't want to ignore your story. I acknowledge everything that's going on, but also we are in a majority, in an area where most of the people are black people and most of them are poor people. So how do we not ignore this discussion, or we enter this discussion through like a hierarchical point of view, like, oh, we're gonna help them. Oh, and I also like to thank Nonty so much for the words that she started this one. When you said you were vulnerable, I really feel that. I mean, I feel how hard it is to talk, to bring these sensitive topics to, you know, to like good vibes environment, you know, and everyone is just telling you, oh my God, what are you trying to do with this space? You want to destroy this trust. But with this field of trust that you created by sharing your story, I think it makes easier for everyone to be open about their privileges and their situation and what can each one do. Talking a bit about myself, I study in Rio, and I've always been focusing on Latin American studies, which is what I focus right now too. And the story of Latin America is very hard in the racial relation sense, right? Because it's built on abuse and rape and slavery and forced mixing of races. And Brazil still has a discourse, like officially, of a mixed country. But if you go for a statistic of who's dying, you know, who's overdosing, who's being arrested, you know who you're gonna see there, and you know it's gonna be black people. And in the same sense, if you go for the statistics of the richest, who's, you know, improving their health conditions, you see white people there. So talking about this in Brazil is always sensitive because there's this ongoing discourse, as Brazil is a mixed democracy, you know, it's a melting pot of different ethnicities. And on the other hand, you see that indigenous people and black people are the ones that suffer with every public policy, you know, or lack of them. And right now we're in a very sensitive moment in Brazil with all the, not sensitive, but hard. I think I should just use the right words for that, you know, because it's a hard time for us Ecovillages, and we are also social an NGO here, and it's also hard for NGOs. It's hard for people who are fighting for nature or basic rights, you know, to those who are considered like non-citizens. I myself have, when I went to Rio, I went through a very particular journey because in Brazil, we have colorisms very strong. So it's institution of the country, even though I'm not acknowledged one, but it interferes in our life and defines many of the things we go through. So in Bahia, I was considered a white person, as in the privileges and the access that I had were those of a white person. Where there are many more white people than Bahia, considering percentages, and then it was not so clear anymore. So I actually engaged in the Black movement over there, and it was eye-opening for me and all the possibilities that we have. But still, I didn't feel like satisfied. I didn't feel comfortable saying I'm Black because I grew up in a very middle-class family and school, private school, and considered white, at least to myself, thinking not in on a racial point of view, but a social point of view. So it was a bit confusing for me. And at the end of this journey, I decided that whichever access is given to me by the supposed whiteness that I get, that I want to use it to further the discourse of equality, you know, whatever that happens. Either in the university where people acknowledge me because I'm a man, because I'm a white, from white to whitish man, considering Brazil situation, and also in my community. So people listen to me here, and I was for so long, I'd say, I don't know, for a whole year, just confused about, okay, what am I racially? Where are my origins? And I decided to just accept whichever privilege was given to me so that I could talk about this. This is what attracted me also to this dialogue here. Prisca and Thumbs and everyone participating and bringing this issue to light, you know, because not talking about it doesn't make it not exist. So this is where I came to with my like racial. I don't have a photo right now. I was trying to put one so that you could see me, because I think in different countries there are very different treatments for people with my physical appearance. Like when I went to Europe the first time, it was a shock to me to not be white because I had never been to another country before. And then I went to the US and I was absolutely Latin and people were speaking to me in Spanish, even though I didn't even speak Spanish back then. So it came to this point where I just decided I need to, as this white person in some context. And this is what I've been doing. I was working on a big company, international one, and there we decided to discuss racism. And I think at the same time that it was like a disaster, it was really important because it was really hard talking to a lot of white people that only know each other through work and telling them, okay, you are racist, this practice racist. But it was also very important and brought many people close to me and closer to our group. We had this race group within the company. And I think the one strategy, like when I think here about my eco-village, right? Because we have to survive. Like we cannot take all the duties of the world to ourselves, and it's hard by itself. But there are also actions we can be doing daily so that we can improve these relations, right? When we are located in a place that is mainly of Black communities, and then we are a white community in the middle of that, what we do with this power that is being given to us, even if we don't want it? You know, which I think is kind of the definition of privilege. You know, so okay, I didn't even ask for that. Yeah, but you have it. So you can either deny that, you know, and just cry to yourself about that or to your friends, or you can take that power and do something about it. And I think what we've been doing here is something I call like raising agency. You know, because I think the time also where social organizations or charities could speak for other people, like in place of the Black communities we have here, for example, I think this time is gone. You know, I think right now what we need to do and what we've been doing is creating ways so that we can raise their agency. So like if we are invited to talk somewhere where one of the people that we've been can go, then we have even if we put our credentials, say, okay, you speak in the name of Tahmidi, but it's much better to have a black woman, a leader of one of the communities we have here, talking in our place. I think this is one way to raise agency, is to just concede the space where you can put the people who have the more experienced background on that and who have lived that, you know. And also, I think even our like social programs, so to speak, not actually programs, we don't have so much infrastructure here. We are only around a community of 25 people, but they have changed for something charity style, like donations and something not so organized, to courses that actually are trying to teach them how to empower their own speech, you know, like political education. Because I think it's in Brazil, it's definitely a big gap in knowledge when you go from poor people to the middle class. Then, like, we in the university, we have some type of access, which makes things seem possible to us, even if hard, you know, like accessing the government or public policies. But then when you go to poorer communities, it's like everything is a given, you know. So if someone gives something to me, like a mayor, is because they are nice. It's not because they're job. So much of the work with their empowerment, we work with family agriculture, and also, I don't know the word, sewing, like making clothes. So, and in both of these programs, we decided to focus on women, be the ones that receive the benefits of these programs, because they are always more community center. And actually all the local associations, like of the communities, they are led by women here, Black women. They are doing this work. So yeah, I think it's about time. Also, I think what we learn is that we don't need to take anyone's place. Even with, I don't know what is my privilege or how do I navigate certain circumstances, there is always a way to raise someone with you if you're given that privilege, you know. So yeah, I think this is it. Thank you everyone, and thanks for organizing this. And yeah, also open to question afterwards.
Thank you so much for sharing, Thyago. Yeah, that was a lot of really really poignant stuff, and it's incredible to hear how much of us have such similar storylines, even though we're continents away from each other. So thank you so much for your work out there. As we go into our last presenter, I want to remind everyone, or actually maybe let everyone know, this is obviously just the beginning of the conversation, and we are so lucky that Nonty is hosting a more frequent webinar about this, and is kind of launching into this multiple times a year webinar about these type of topics. And so for now, I'm going to pass the mic on to Gabriel, but I want to let everyone know I'll give the mic to Nonty at the end of the call here to invite everyone to furthering this conversation. And so just in case you need to leave soon and wanted to make sure you knew we're still going to be inviting you, and we'll put that in the notes. So for now, I'll pass it on to Gabriel, and for the sake of giving you as much time as possible, I'm not going to do an introduction. I'm just going to let you dive in because you are such an eloquent and charismatic speaker. So the mic is yours, Gabriel. I know you were having some technical issues. I hope they're cleared up now.
Maybe Nonty can talk about. Oh, here he is.
Hi everyone. So I'm Gabriel Siqueira. I'm the communications director from GEN. And from Nora's checklist of privileges, I got all of them except for stable internet. So I apologize if I have to drop out soon. It may happen, you know, it has been failing a lot in the last couple of moments. If you can't hear me or anything like that, just write down something on the chat and I'll try to to keep aware of that. I want to thank a lot Thumbs and Prisca for setting this up. You know, it's an amazing space you are creating here, and Nonty, well, everyone actually that came before me for your powerful talks, but Nonty actually brought me to the brink of tears. And as I said before, I got a 100% privilege on Nora's checklist, so prepare for some male white tears now. And yeah, I really appreciate that Thyago came before me, because he gave a broad context where I'm also sharing most of the background of where I live. I'm also in Bahia. We're apart only 150 kilometers, so our experiences are much closer. But I came from São Paulo, which is in the southeast of Brazil. It's the richest city in Brazil, the biggest city in Latin America, in South America. So it's a more white city, more white region. And when I came to Bahia, some 9 years ago, this white privilege became much stronger. As Thyago mentioned, there is this thing about coloring, and it doesn't matter where you come from or like what's your background, but how do you look like? And I look very white for Brazilian standards. I also experienced what Thyago said of going abroad and then realizing I'm actually not white, except here in Brazil, maybe other South American countries, but definitely not in US and Europe. But in Bahia, I'm much more white, you know, and I had a small experience of getting away from a couple of my privileges, because I used to have dreadlocks, very long dreadlocks. And when I was still in São Paulo, I went into like stores, shopping malls, supermarkets, and security people would follow me while I was walking inside the place, you know. So I wasn't used to that before I had dreadlocks. It was a choice for me to experience that, but at the same time, you know, I felt on my skin a bit of what most of Brazilians experience every day in their lives. And when I co-founded an eco-village here in Bahia, in the countryside, also in a quilombola area, as Thyago explained, you know, I'm not sure if remainder of Maroon communities really says anything, but this is how I found translations on the internet to explain what quilombola is. But we bought a piece of land with a group of friends within a quilombola region, and then structural racism was an even bigger issue than when I was in São Paulo, you know, or even in Bahia, outside of this context of rural area, you know, quilombolas. I'm going to talk more about my personal experience, because I think we already have a very strong background on racism, privilege, and also the context of Brazil. I think Thyago brought it up. But I have a story, you know, a personal history that can illustrate what we are talking about, what we've been discussing. So when we start negotiating the land here in the rural area of Brazil, and first I have to say that in this group that we were creating the eco-village, mostly white, we had one Arab person and one indigenous descendant, and the rest of the group of 10 people were all white, half foreigners. And in Brazil, being a foreigner is more, it's more obvious of a privilege than being white. You know, if you're white and foreigner, it's even bigger. So when we started negotiating to buy this piece of land, we were invited by the owner that was negotiating with us to join the Quilombola Association meeting that they host monthly, because he wanted to introduce me, because they have like a local governance, and we were gonna get into this local system, so it would be interesting for us to get to know the community. And so I went by boat to the piece of land to meet the guy that was helping out the owner of the land, and we went walking, passing in this cocoa farm. You know, we're in a cocoa region in the middle of the rainforest, and we're walking through the Quilombola community. So you see like one small house in the middle of the rainforest, another one there, and walking in like dirty paths. And I feel like I'm going to like a journey to a different time, not only a different place, you know, and like all dirty roads, no cars. And then when we reached the house of the biggest, like the strongest leadership, the older guy that started the association, the Quilombola Association, and the Quilombola Association's headquarters is within his land. It's next to his house. So when you reach there, I see like this small house built of clay, with the floor is just earth, you know, it's dirt, no flooring, and around the porch you had these benches and all the like these people sitting around it, you know, all black people. And on the middle of the porch you have a swinging chair, and sitting in this swinging chair is the old leader, you know, this guy, he's called Manuel Cupim, Manuel Termite, because they all have nicknames related to nature. So Manuel Termite is sitting there, and then this guy that was leading me there, he surrenders his machete, and he has like a homemade shotgun, you know, for hunting. So he surrenders it to the owner, and the guy gets it, you know, a very careful way, kind of ritualistic, you know. I'm like, wow, where am I, you know, what I mean. And I felt privileged to be witnessing that, you know. And then we go to this meeting with the association. We go to the association headquarters, which is just a shed, you know, with a like crumbling roof, with amianto, asbestos roof, you know. And they start discussing the situation of the previous owner of the land that we were negotiating. And they and the owner, the guy that is negotiating with us, he's light brown skin. And the guys in the community, they start like inquiring a lot of stuff from him of what he has done, you know, like interrupting paths and like all these like local issues. And then at one point they say, it's not because you are white that you think that you can reach here our community and start doing what you want. And I look around and like, if he's white, I'm like, what, a piece of paper, you know, like I'm whiter than white, like I'm pink, you know. So and I'm kind of embarrassed of being there, but at the same time like amazed by what I see happening, you know. And I'm kind of concerned, you know, how they're going to welcome me. And then the owner of the land introduced me and said, oh, this is part of the group that is going to buy my land, you know, they're negotiating. And then I see like all these guys, like, and they start inquiring me, what do you intend to do with the waterfall? Because there's a small river going within, you know, we are using this waterfall for traditional uses for many years. Oh, we have this traditional path of land going, path going within your land, crossing your land. You can't change that. I'm like, no, we're not going to change anything. You know, we're just trying to figure where we are. We're not going to do any drastic changes so far. We just want to know how you guys work, and we want to integrate into that. But, you know, it was a tough question. And I felt like, you know, kind of, okay, I have to take care of where I'm stepping, you know. And then like when the meeting wraps up, there is this guy, like he's one of the younger guys there in the meeting, and he also has dreadlocks. So he comes to me and like, you know, give me a high five and said, welcome. And, you know, and I said, wow, maybe if it wasn't for the dreadlocks, I wouldn't have that such a warm welcome, you know. So he broke the ice and things got a bit more light after that. When we got out, you know, the guy that was leading me back to where I came from, he went to get back his machete and his gun, and the old guy went inside his house and he brought like, you know, his hands full of machetes and homemade weapons, you know. So I noticed that it wasn't just this guy, but actually everyone left their weapons before entering the meeting, you know, so it wouldn't end up in bloodshed or anything like that. But in the end, after 5 years there, I really got into the community. I become one of the members of the Quilombola community, contributing financially as well. I participated in almost every monthly meeting. I ended up working with them and supporting not only that community, but 9 other Quilombola communities in the region. And we built trust between ourselves. You know, when we did the first, we invited people from the local community to join us in agroforestry implementation, and all the older leaders came to our work, you know. So we were actually able to establish a super powerful and trustworthy relationship with this local community, which was so beautiful, you know, to approach them and to get to know them, and slowly conquering their trust as well, you know, and showing them that we're not actually going to reproduce the history of white people arriving in the countryside of Brazil and either expelling the black people that were there or re-enslaving them, as it has been happening in the many years. Not actually slaving, but analog to slavery kind of work, you know. So we were building different kind of relationship, you know. At first they couldn't really understand, but at the same time we were always gringos, you know. We're always foreigners. Like, I mean, I was considered a foreigner too because I'm white and I'm with a group of foreigners, so I must be a foreigner too, you know. So they called us the gringos land, you know. So every time they referred to us, we were gringos. And then after almost 5 years there, a robbery happened, you know. A gun-armed robbery happened. 4 guys wearing ski masks arrived there. So we couldn't see them, but it was from their hands holding the guns and the eyes, you could see that they were brown and black. And we had all these volunteers hosted there, mostly white.
Oh, such a powerful story. I hope we don't lose you, Gabriel. Anyone else able to hear Gabriel?
I could try to talk to him on WhatsApp or something to see what's up.
Well, it's definitely a powerful story, and luckily he also did a TEDx talk. So in the notes, maybe we can share the TEDx talk, which touches lightly on bits of this story. And so I want to, in the meantime, while we have this little window and figure out the technical, Nonty, would you be up for sharing with everyone your invitation? I know we're getting close to the end, so preemptively thanking everyone for showing up. But if we have a minute here, it'd be great to have Nonty's invitation.
I'm back.
Oh, back. Okay.
Okay. Should I continue or let's move on? I don't know.
It's tough to both. I would love, maybe we'll start with just Nonty's quick invitation to the,
yeah,
so we can follow up, because maybe the story will get continued there. And,
yeah.
And then
I'm reaching the conclusion. I promise. I'm almost at the end of it.
Okay.
But go ahead, Nonty. Go ahead, Nonty. I'm looking forward for your invitation as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And yeah, wow, I'm touched and I'm moved, and I'm encouraged at the same time, and really feel like this is it. I really believe in this work, and it is possible, and it can be done. And so the invitation is that thanks to the URI, which is the United Religions Initiative that Rise Ubuntu Network is part of, they've just helped us to organize like Zooms until December. So the dates and times are already organized, and we're just going to continue what we're doing right now, and everybody's invited, and we would like to collaborate with NextGEN, to continue to collaborate with NextGEN. And we're just going to be really going organic and covering topics on racism and mental health as well, and holding spaces for healing and grief, and co-creating together and seeing what can we do together. So these are like 2 meetings a month. And then we're going to decide how we divide them, but as well as just creating spaces for the people of color to come together as well, to do our own processes, and then white people to also be in their own space and also coming together as well. So all these spaces will be created as well online. So this is just the continuity of what I do, like holding sacred spaces live, but we're going to be doing it online. So it'll be great if we all continue and you invite other people also who are not in the networks. So we'll send out an email for the exact dates, and we're also going to put it on Facebook. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Bringing sacred to the digital is the new frontier. So I appreciate that. And as far as time goes, I want to check everyone. We have about 5 more minutes. And if Gabriel finishes up his story, and then I know that he has to leave fairly quickly after, but I have the time to stay on a little bit after, and anyone else is invited to, and then we can have space for more questions for who's still present. So I'm going to pass it back to Gabriel for now.
Yeah, I'll be able to continue. Actually, I had a meeting, but I was able to postpone it. So just to conclude, you know, so we had this robbery and people pointing guns at everyone, and they're all brown. Most of the people there are white, you know, the volunteers. We have like some 20 people there. They tie people up, and they break a guitar on the head of my partner, you know, this guy that was one of the co-founders. He's white, American, and the robbers assume that he must have money because he's foreigner, he's white, he has to have money stashed somewhere. But he doesn't, you know. His money is on the bank, and he actually has some trouble getting money out of the bank because he has a daily limit. So he's actually borrowing money from us all the time because he doesn't have money in his hands, you know. But they can't believe this, so he's kind of tortured, you know, so that he would say where his money is stashed. And the only other person to get hit by the robbers was a black volunteer from Salvador, you know, and they hit him hard because they said he was a traitor. He was re-enslaving himself for the white people that were invading their land. So this is why I wanted to tell the story of the robberies as well, you know, to see like how this inequality, class and privilege and race are so intertwined here in Brazil, you know. And although we were doing like a big effort to approach the community and work with them and support them, you know, and work with them and give them jobs as well, good high-paying jobs as well, you know, better than average at least. And it wasn't enough to protect ourselves from what even the privileged in Brazil suffer from this inequality and related to race. But at the same time, even when something horrible as a violent robbery is happening, black people suffer more than white, you know. I'm privileged even when I'm being robbed because the black guy that was just a volunteer that got hit harder, you know, and like nobody touched me. So, you know, this is just like, so I told Thumbs and Priska when we were starting to imagine how this was going to be. And I said, I don't have any answers, you know. I don't know how to deal with all that. So I'm dealing with it, just sharing with all of you what's happening, you know, and I hope it supports the discussion somehow. And just to be aware of all that, I think it's already powerful and it's starting to change something. And what I'm telling from my personal experience, I actually saw in many other communities in Brazil, in eco-villages. You know, eco-villages in Brazil, in the rural area, suffer a lot because of this inequality too, because it's not safe being in a rural area where you don't have police service. So this is something that affects every eco-village in Brazil too, you know. So this is what I wanted to bring into the table, and I want to honor a lot Nora for bringing a framework of discussion, and Nonty for such a powerful speech, and as well as Crystal Bird, you know, I think like you mobilized energies within me that are so powerful and so tough to deal with, and I want to honor that. You know, last month Jen hosted the climate change webinar, and it's hard to talk about climate change, but it doesn't compare with talking about privilege and race. You know, so I'm much more moved about this discussion, and you know, it's not a good energy that makes me super enthusiastic about changing the world, but I know I have to face it, you know. So I want to honor you guys for making me feel not good, but importantly disturbed by all these questions. So thanks a lot for everyone for hearing me, and let's discuss it now. I'm going to continue in the call too. So thanks a lot for the space, and I'm sorry for taking advantage of my privilege of being here.
Yes, privilege is so complicated, but like those tears can water some deeper roots of activism. So thank you for also bringing your vulnerability. I want to pass the mic now on to Beatriz. If you're up, had a question for Nonty about an hour and a half ago, and has patiently held it this entire time. And I'm wondering if it still feels appropriate to share that question. And Nonty, if you have a few minutes to receive a question.
Yes, I do.
You have time. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to appreciate a lot to NextGEN for bringing this sensitive topic. Yeah, that's a very important topic to talk and to think about it. I have just two specific questions to Nonty. Nonty, did you have the opportunity to be a GEN board member for a while? How was the experience in you? Did you feel a kind of exclusiveness in the board? Because it's not in a particular Ecovillage, but in the network as a global network. We also, of course, have to handle with that. I really want to know how was your experience to be a board member, and we shared the table in the board member as board member at the same times. So I wanna hear your voice about it, and also I wanna bring the train that Jen participated about healing collective trauma, and how we as Jen, how we can use this tool that is already in our hands, and some Jen members has this tool already in their hands, in their soul, in their heart. So how we can use this powerful tool to move forward in our global net, handle with this situation of exclusiveness and racism and all these topics. Nonty?
Yeah. Thank you. It's nice to see you, and thank you for asking the question. I think when I spoke, I had already mentioned that I am also specifically talking about the way I serve in the circles that I have served in GEN. So yes, to your answer, yes, being in the GEN board also created a lot of pressure on me, and me doing this work also came from that experience of me being in the GEN board. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I will be glad to talk deeper with you about it. If you don't mind, I will be so happy to go deeper on that.
No, that's fine. I'm glad to do that, but I'm not, as I said in the beginning, I feel very vulnerable, and it's important to speak about these things, and to create spaces of honesty and of and also we need to have this awareness of what we've already spoke about, the tendency to question what people of color bring, to question what people of color say about their experiences. So just to bring awareness to that as well. And I don't remember, did you have another question? Was it two questions? Or?
I just mentioned healing of collective trauma training that many Gen people made, and how we can take the most advantage of this training, of this way to heal about the collective trauma that we talk about.
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a complicated. I don't mean to interrupt, Nonty. Do you feel complete on your response?
Yes, I feel.
Okay.
I feel complete on my response, but I'm also having very intense body processes.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling it in my stomach. I'm feeling it in my knees.
Mm-hmm.
So yes. So just put that there as transparent.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, so I can understand. That's sometimes the challenge with the digital interface is we only see such a small bit of each other. It's hard to really read where folks are at. Within the schedule, we now, I didn't see, there was no other HHs over the course of the call that I saw. So now within the schedule, so kind of running after, but still following the general framework, would be an opportunity for us to break into the smaller groups, which might be a safer place for folks to share what's come up for them, and just, be able to say things without being worried that there's over 20 people listening to every word you share. So my proposal now would be, we have 25 folks still here, and I can break us up into groups of 3 to 4. And if we just do that for, about 5 minutes, you can share what comes alive for you in that time, and then we'll reconvene after 5 minutes and have a chance to share our inputs there. And feel free to wander off if you want to. Now we'll probably be here for another 15 minutes or so. So before we break out into small groups, is there anything someone wants to share?
Yeah, before you leave, if you have to leave, please make sure to go to the Google Drive that I'm going to put it here again. So just so you have all the links and, the transcription of this meeting and everything, so you don't fall behind. I'll just put it here. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. I see folks are starting to dip out, but a few of us will still be here. So, all right, I'll see you all in the private rooms. We'll see how this goes.
Hello, everybody. We have 5 minutes.
Hey.
Hi, Nonty.
Hi.
So, do we do like 1 minute each, like free speech, or Krista, you wanna start? How you feel? What do you feel?
Me? Well, I don't know if I want to start. I feel like, yeah, okay, I can say something. Yeah, I'm really, really happy with this meeting. I have been putting a lot of effort into coordinating everything and bringing everyone to talk, and it has been over 2 months now that we have, been coordinating everything, and I feel just really blessed and privileged, really, to be part of this. And Nonty, really, your words were absolutely powerful. I could see in the faces of everyone while listening to you that everyone was like, oh my God, I felt really touched by what you said specifically. And as well, I'm Brazilian, but as Gabriel said, I have the privilege here in Brazil. I am considered white. I am an Italian. Well, yeah, my family is actually Italian. So I do have all that European ancestry within me as well. And to live in Brazil as a white person like this is really a lot of privilege. And I'm just really blessed that I'm able to listen and better myself. And I'm glad that people like you are in Gen, for example, still, even though it's difficult. And yeah, just really blessed with this. Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, thank you, Priska, for organizing this. And was very surprised with the number of people that showed up. I actually started processing from yesterday. This is not easy for me. Actually, Beatrice's question just hit me hard, and I'm not quite sure. I'm processing that because I'm not quite sure. So it's bringing up a lot of emotions that were before and were not while we were in the webinar itself. But then her question has brought me back into those intense feelings. So I'm processing that sense of feeling like I'm being questioned again, and my intentions, and yeah. So it's a process that I'm going through right now, but I am strongly moved, and I believe in co-creation, and I believe we all came because we believe in something that we need to heal, and something that is important, and something that we need to think about. And I hope we continue to do this and find ways to grow together. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for taking that position. I mean, it's really not a difficult one, and it's not fair, but it's good that we have bridge builders, you know, people that are stepping on both sides. So thanks for that. Yeah, I'm from South Africa also, and I've also spent some time in Europe. And you know, it's really funny. I have a friend from Brazil who came visit recently. I was visiting for the Nonty conference, creating a kind of community house, and it's really funny. I'd never actually looked at her as being a white person. I always just considered her to be a Brazilian person, you know. So it's even quite strange for me to kind of discover at this stage, you know, that it's even a lot more complex and unnecessarily so. Yeah. And what about you, Emam? Hi. I think you're muted.
Yeah. Hello. I'm part of NextGEN. I've been part of it since this year, and I wanted to bring you some hope and wish, because even if I'm privileged, the life hit me and gave me the opportunity to see things from a different point of view. And I see the importance of what we are doing through the troubles, through everything. Like everyday life is always going through troubles. And in Ecovillages, I see the possibility to share with other people, to be at the same level. I really love the book of Manitom Kwa about the circle way and how the pyramid, the structure in our society brings a lot of violence, even when we don't see it. And in Ecovillages, I see the possibility to start again from the ground. So it's a hard fight as long as we fight into the society, but we have also the opportunity to find a safe place, share it, as we are doing today. And I really feel all your energy, and that motivates me a lot to do more and to go on. Thank you.
Okay, I think thumbs, well, breakout rooms. Thumbs will probably put us all together again soon. Is there anything anyone else would like to talk about?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I had a interesting experience. I was part of direct action climate camp in the north of Netherlands. And it was quite interesting because we had a POC, closed circle, on one of the nights. It was a camp that lasted over like a week. And it was really interesting to see the reaction from white people. Obviously, for the people of color that were in this closed meeting, and closed meeting was strictly defined as if you're a person of color, this is your meeting, and if not, then not. And it was really interesting to see, I mean, something just as simple as a kind of curtain, you know, separating us from the outside world. And suddenly people had the courage to say something and to step forward and to ask something and, you know, to be vulnerable. And it really said so much to be fighting for the climate and putting our bodies on the line along with everyone else, but having a whole extra set of kind of challenges that it's not acknowledged. Yeah, I think that's the signal to go back in. But yeah, that was just really interesting. And then also the reaction of the white people to being excluded from something like this was problematic. But yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Prisca, are you coming to Italy this summer for the GEN conference?
Oh, no, I can't. This summer I can't, but I'll probably be there next year. Yeah. You're Italian, right?
Yes.
My family's from Verona.
I'm close to there.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I also hear a lot of Verona.
What? Sorry?
In Verona, there are many racist people.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. We'll keep in touch. I think we have to leave the room now, but we'll keep in touch. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Everyone's coming back, and it looks like it's for everyone to come back muted. So be aware of that. Interesting. Well, open the floor now, and I really enjoyed my breakout group, and I hope folks didn't have too many technical difficulties. I know there were some, because someone right next to me was having them. But I want to open, if anyone has something to share, this would be a really great time. And to make it a little bit easier to share, what I would love to do is actually just pass it from person to person. And if you don't have anything to share, just say pass. And that's really great. But I want everyone to at least have the mic in their hand, because sometimes I know a privilege I have as a white male is that I kind of always feel like I have the mic in my hand, and it's more of an active process to set the mic down. But I know other folks feel like it's sometimes hard for them to pick up the mic. So we'll pass it down the line, and you can just look at the participant list to see everyone on the list, and we'll pass it to the next in line. So for now, I'll do that by passing it on to Prisca for something to share.
I'm just really, really glad, really happy, and even moved, as I said in the small groups. I'm just, what I have to share is just really gratitude, really. I think that's the main feeling that I have right now. It's just a lot of gratitude, and also things are sinking in. It's a lot, it's very deep. It was a very deep meeting. It was not something that you just listen and yeah, okay, bye, I'm gonna go and do my things now. It's something that you have to let sink in. And I'm just really, really grateful to all the speakers and to everyone that has shown up, and to Thumbs as well for making this happen with me. And yeah, it's just really simple. It's just gratitude and learning, loads of learning. Thank you. And I'll pass the mic to Audrey.
I feel very similar with the gratitude for both of you organizing it and everybody showing up, like just seeing people from everywhere in the world, from all sub-circles of Gen. It makes me feel so hopeful that this is becoming an important topic in the eco-village movement, and I see other events talking about it. It's like so present, and yeah, I feel super hopeful, and I'm really grateful for the vulnerability of all the presenters who really went into like personal experiences, and yeah, I like that. One of the biggest, what I will remember most is listening, and I love doing that, and I want to teach people to do it more, and so if that can help, it feels great. And so I pass it on to Angus.
Hey, super. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Quick outtake. It's just such a complicated subject, and then also the kind of dealing with screens, you know, kind of can also be kind of complicating, and also maybe gives people the kind of power, but it definitely adds a few different elements. Yeah, I mean, I guess for myself, if I had to look at this kind of meeting and think, okay, like in a year or 2 years or X amount of time, if the majority of this screen is filled with the black faces, then I think we're doing something, and filled with many more screens, you know? And I really think that it's got to do a lot to do with stories and story. And in this particular case, I guess it's who's telling the story and who's always told the story and who has access to the microphone. And depending on what your answer to that question is, I guess you just choose your position and use it well. But thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone. Oh, and I've got to pass it on to Nonty. Thank you.
Hi. Yes. I just want to say thank you to everybody that showed up. Thank you for your time, and I hope this works. I'm feeling ready to step right now, I have to say. But I hope we can continue this work and co-create together and really create a new story that includes everybody. Thank you. Pass it to Nora. Nora, you still there?
No, she's gone.
Okay. So whoever, Jane, you have something to say?
Yes, I just want to thank you, Nonty, for being, for bringing all this into the light. And I personally don't know how to deal with it in myself, in Gen, in a group. And I hope that I learn how to, because I think as much as anyone else, I have this inside me, and it's quite hard to face up to that. So I just want to honor the whole meeting, especially your contribution. And if there's any way I can support you, I don't know, or whatever, you know where I am. I'll pass it on to Thumbs. Did he have a shot already, Thumbs? Sorry.
A lot of shots. So thank you. Just want to reiterate our desire for support of Nonty, and that and anyone who feelings like that is such a big part of this is the healing that we can try and support one another through the digital medium. So please, if there's any way we can support, let us know. And I will then quickly pass it on to Mom, EM-OM.
Hello, sorry, my name is Emilio, and part of NextGEN, and I really enjoyed this moment, and I'm here also to continue to take actions into this in the community I live. Everywhere I see a lot of solutions, a lot of actions, and the incredible diversity we carry on, I think is a great opportunity. So I really love all the different stories, and they all teach me something, and they show me that even in their little community, they are bringing action. So I would like then to know how we continue also to keep in contact, how we can organize actions, because yes, also disadvantage we have, these privileges we all have, we can use them to put them in the middle of the circle, in a vision, as it was said, and only there we can be all together. So we have the instruments, we have the possibility, and I really thank you all for bringing your energy. And I pass to Luvian.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for this really wonderful webinar session about privilege and inequality. And for me, like, this whole privilege and inequality thing is very complex, and I'm still like processing about all the things that the speakers are saying, as it's a very intricate idea, notion. But next time, for like in terms of privilege and inequality, I would love to discuss more about the economic aspect of it, like in economic inequality, because I'm sure it plays a really significant role and have a really inextricable relationship with privilege and race issues. So yeah, that's what I would love to talk about next time when we have other sessions, similar sessions. And yeah, thank you, everybody. I would love to pass it on to Hyosun Kang. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Hi. You can call me Sun. And I really, really, really feel grateful and also privileged to be here and listen for 2 hours using computer and everything. And I'm really, really happy all these talks. And last year, like not talking with Nonty in Gen Europe conference really wake me up about these topics. And then now I'm really into it and I want to learn more. And I would be really happy if I have a more opportunity to talk about this, and also talking about this specifically in eco-villages. It's very interesting that strong-willed people, yeah, can also have the side of privilege and inequality, and how can we move from there. It's really important. So maybe next time I'd love to talk about how can we use our privilege to move forward. That would be really interesting for me. Yeah, and yeah, I was really happy. Thank you for organizing. Thank you for everything. And I don't know who else left. Moira? Is it Moira spoke already? No. Nope. What about Luvian? Is Luvian there?
I just pass it to you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was the one before you.
Is there anyone else didn't speak?
Sophia, we can have Sophia.
Okay. Sophia, are you there?
Sure, can you all hear me? Well, yeah, just grateful to be a part of this call, and I'm also really happy to support wasn't I'm looking who was saying it's hard to know how to deal with this, and I'm happy to support white folks who are looking to work on healing from their own internalized whiteness. And I think there's a lot of healing that we need to do and before we can really like understand this in ourselves and how racism is also like internalized in us and harming us. That like yeah, just basically the healing work that is going to like free and liberate all of us, because we are just as much in need of support. Like we need the same, we need so much healing in all of us. So anyway, I just wanted to be a resource in that. I have a few resources and I'm happy to support, and I'm also glad that I'm on this journey with you all and continuing to learn. So thank you.
Okay, and we can, last, I believe, is Jaime, you, or Jamie, depending on where you're from.
And Gabriel, and I think Moira hasn't spoken, but I'm not sure.
Well, if any of those folks heard our offers, Gabriel,
I'm
Jamie.
here.
Okay.
I don't want to have the last word. I really want to thank you all for being here and supporting this collective healing as well. And Nonty's talk really touched me, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more aggressive Black people angry because of this situation, because it's reasonable, it's the least. And also to say about privilege, how I've been understanding privilege recently, not as something special, but as human rights, but unfortunately human rights have been denied for most of people. So human rights are not human yet. They haven't reached the whole humanity. And it has to, we cannot rest until it is a human right and not a privilege. So this is how I see it right now, and I want to use my privilege to allow this to happen the most I can. So I just want to honor this space, and I hope next time I'm not speaking and we have less white male guys talking and more angry Black people and maybe some Asians too, and people talking about what we have to listen to, because it's not easy, but we have to listen to it, and it's painful, but it's necessary. So thank you so much.
Well, if anyone hasn't shared their goodbyes, the floor is open. All right. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for showing up. And we have the notes. Oh, I see a finger.
Yeah, it's me. No, it's just a finger. It's just because we have to now see how we're gonna continue this. We don't need to do it, to discuss this on this call, but maybe I can create a group, or I'm just gonna email everyone, and then we see what we can do, practical stuff, when, and then what we're gonna discuss, if it's gonna be like a monthly thing and everything, study groups. So yeah, just be prepared. I'm gonna email everyone, and that's all. And please go on to the Google Drive, because all the links, everything is there, so we can study further.
Yeah, I also just want to thank Trudy for holding, also for organizing. And so yeah, if we can just send an email and work on the next steps and send the recording as well to everybody. Then
we're gonna upload the recordings on the YouTube channel for Gen, okay? And we're gonna put it on all our social media. So we're gonna continue this discussion as well as give more.
Yeah, and the recording will also be on the Google Drive within all the rest. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all of you so much. I have to go.
Yes. Thank you, all of you, so much. I'm also going to be closing this meeting, but that will not close the conversation. So many blessings, and continue to do your work of spreading the love. Goodbye, everybody.